Hi, in this tutorial we will set up an aggregate using OnCommand System Manager. There's another video like this, but then that one is with the command line interface. So in this case we're using OnCommand System Manager. The structure of this video is exactly the same as the tutorial with the command line interface. First of all, we will list the spares, because you can only create or grow an aggregate if you've got enough spare disks assigned to a node. Then we'll create an aggregate with a very small array group size of 6. You will not do this in real life because 6 is way too small to have proper performance, but since this is just an example, we'll stick with 6. We check the array group that's created and then change the maximum array group size to 10. After that we will grow the aggregate with another 14 disks, and this will fill out the first RAID group from 6 to 10, and then use the remaining 10 drives for a new RAID group. After that we will offline and delete the aggregate and zero all of the unzeroed spare disks. Zeroing spares means that the system itself does not have to do that if you want to use these spares to create a new aggregate. That will make it a lot faster. Also, when you want to grow an aggregate, it will make it a lot faster. So let's do it. We're in the dashboard of System Manager and go to Storage. Then we select Disks and we get to see the summary, but we don't want to see the summary, we want to see the inventory. So we want to have a listing of all of our disks. When we do that, we go to the container type and we deselect all and we select spares only. So that will show us the spare disks that we have, and we want to limit that to node 2 because we want to create the aggregate in node 2. So here we see all our disks that are spare disks owned by node 2, and that's 24 disks in total if you would count them. And we can use these to create the aggregate. So we go back and select Aggregates, Create. Now System Manager wants to help and proposes to create 2 aggregates, one for each node. But we don't want that. We want to create our aggregate manually. So we enable the Manual button. We give the aggregate a name. We select 6 disks for the number of disks. And also we set the RAID group size to 6. And we see that this will create a RAID group 0 of 6 disks, 2 parity and 4 data disks. We acknowledge this and we create the aggregate. Now it says that it's not online, but when we refresh, System Manager detects that the aggregate is okay and it's all fine. Now we change the RAID group size to 10 and check what the result would be if we would add any disks. So it would grow this RAID group to 10. Now we add capacity. We choose 14 disks. And by default it would add these disks to all of the RAID groups. But we could select a specific RAID group. Or instead of adding to existing RAID groups, we could only create a new RAID group. Or multiple new RAID groups. We stick to the default, so we save it and then add. Once that's done, we check and see that it may need a refresh. And we see, as expected, it is still 6, so we have to do a refresh. And now the total is 20. And when looking at the disks, we see that there are disks in RAID group 0 and there are disks in RAID group 1. So we've grown the aggregate by filling out RAID group 0 to 10 disks and creating RAID group 1 also with 10 disks. So we've got 2 equal RAID groups. Finally, we offline the aggregate by changing its status to offline. We delete it. Then we zero the spares. So we zero all non-zeroed spares. We refresh a last time and see that we only have the two root aggregates we started off with. So this concludes this tutorial.